And so the whole goal of Ayurveda is to heal the body and the mind, to get it to a state of harmony so
Right.
that it is in the position to, one, heal itself, but then it also allows our vessel to be free to fulfill its true purpose.
Hmm. Hi, I'm Scott Ware, the publisher of Radiance Magazine, and you're watching Interviews on Xpnsion Network. And I have a special guest with me today. She is an Ayurvedic expert, and welcome Valerie Hwang. Hi, Valerie.
Hi, how are you doing?
Great. And I know you're doing great because you keep your health in check with thousands of years old Ayurvedic practice. And I want to ask you about a couple things on that, including how we can tend to deplete our health and how we can watch out for that. The fact that you do quite a bit of remote healing, which I know a lot of people are interested in. And in your logo, you have a Japanese inspired guard dog. So I'd be interested to see how what you bring from the Japanese to in Indian, I would call it not a ritual, but a practice.
A practice.
And then also yoga nidra, which I know is like a deeper meditation or almost a sort of sleep that enables us to heal ourselves. I want to hear about all of this from your expertise. Thank you for joining me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me here.
So how do we get sick, and what does that have to do with Ayurveda, which I know goes back thousands of years?
Okay. So Ayurveda is, as you said, an ancient medical science system of medicine.
Mhm.
But rather than just healing the body from diseases and alleviating suffering, Ayurveda also draws its practices from the idea that removing suffering from the human body creates the opportunities for humans to realize their full potential.
Hmm.
So it's not just getting rid of a cold. It's not
Yeah.
just, healing gastritis.
Hmm.
It's what happens after you get better. That's important.
Sure. And it's interesting because once you get better, you have a lot more room to do things because your energy levels are up and you don't have gastritis or something like that pulling your energy. So then you have more energy to do more things. And what are you counseling people in that particular point? What are you telling them or working with them on?
So people come to me with different goals, actually, and so I meet people where they're at. If they want to work on healthy lifestyle and digestion, that's a lot of what I do. That's mainly what I do, and
Okay.
so getting them to learn what to eat, what is good for them, what time they should wake up, etc., in a way that is accessible to them and their
Sure.
lifestyle. But then there are also people who come to me and they want to work on um, some of the deeper stuff. So, like removing their obstacles to why they have resistance to get healthy is also a thing that I do.
Interesting.
Yeah, and
Eh,
we all have resistances to getting
Now,
healthy.
that does it. That's kind of counterintuitive. What are some reasons, deep-seated reasons humans tend to have for that?
A lot of it is attachment.
Mm,
So attachment to, it could be identity, or it can be to something that we like. Um, classic one is like coffee or
mm,
chocolate. Things that we really start to bring into our daily lives as ritual
mm,
oftentimes. And so, you know, ritual is good. Routine is good. But there's some people who, if they have coffee, they get really loopy.
mm.
And then for some of us, we overwork, and so we start to rely on this substance to get us through the day.
Sure.
And so we end up having like 2, 3, 4 cups. So what happens when that happens? Like when we take that much, right? Then we start to that's a false sense of energy. It's not coming from actual fuel.
Hmm.
And so we get depleted. So um these are some examples of ways that we might have resistance to actual health, is because
Sure.
we're kind of distracted by other things in our
Right.
life, whether that be achievement um, or duty or identity.
Interesting. So that's, you mentioned identity a couple times. Now, what parts of our identity are harming us health wise?
Um, well, that's a big question. We have so many identities, but
Hmm.
when we're born, when we're conceived, we don't have any default identities.
Right.
Everything is assigned to us or something that we decide. And having identity is not a bad thing necessarily.
Hmm.
But as we go along, we start to forget that these are choices that we made.
Right.
Um,
Like,
and
like
yeah,
what's an example of a choice we would have made as a young child that would affect us later?
really simple one that actually does have to do with diet is preference of food.
Hmm.
And this could tie it to culture and ethnicity as well, but just like on a more basic level, like for example, me, I um I hated cilantro. And the first time I tasted it, it was awful, I remember. And um there was this tendency to then be like, I am a person who hates cilantro, rather than like, I didn't like cilantro in this dish in this one particular moment.
I see what you mean now with
Yeah.
by identity. So one person might say, I'm just not a carrot eater,
Hmm.
and they made that decision. So they've kind of blocked off any opportunity for carrots to be prepared in a way that they'd find delicious.
Yes, exactly. It's as simple as that sometimes. And then it
Mm.
gets, it does get deeper, more complex when we start to look at things beyond food.
Yeah.
For some people, food is what's holding them back because they don't want to eat anything other than like, maybe like a bread and a steak or etc. Right?
Yeah.
So, or they're like scared of vegetables. There's a lot of fear actually around vegetables. So,
Mhm.
that is something was like, okay, well, when did you decide? What happened? Right?
Yeah.
To make you
Okay.
fear
So you
vegetables.
you counsel people, walk them through that, and that's where a lot of your remote coaching and remote healing takes place in that situation.
Hmm.
Okay.
I mean, a lot of Ayurveda can be done remotely if we can glean enough information.
Sure.
Um, and I started my practice in the pandemic, so there was no other choice.
Sure.
Ayurveda does have some very useful tools, face to face, pulse reading, um, body therapies, etc. But even without being able to use those tools, we have so many other diagnostics that we can use by looking at
Sure.
people's tongue, by looking at your face, looking the way that you speak,
Right.
assessing your habits. That like, as long as I can get to know you, it doesn't matter if it's through a screen.
Sure. Makes sense. Okay.
Mhm.
So how do we get sick?
Yes. So there are different levels to this, but we usually start in Ayurveda at the three causes of disease.
Mm.
And so the first one is what we would call misuse of the senses.
Mm.
And so we have our sight, smell, touch, taste, hearing.
Right.
And they can either lead us to harmony or imbalance, depending on how we use them. So
Okay.
when we use them to satisfy um, our desires in terms of like indulgences or wanting more of something, because the senses, they want to party, and so like they taste um, some really tasty cheese and they want more cheese, or
Mm.
um,
Okay.
yeah.
So I see what you mean by the
Yeah.
misuse of the senses.
Uh-huh.
So what's the missing part there? Because yeah, if something tastes good, you want to just give yourself more, but a thought needs to pop in like, okay, maybe this is enough. Maybe, so walk me through the conversation you might have with yourself on that. I imagine you have something you like to binge on or something. If is there something
Yeah.
you really like that, yep,
Chocolate. I love
chocolate? Okay.
chocolate.
Mhm.
Okay. And so chocolate is it's sweet, but it's also a little bit bitter. It's a little bit acidic. It's a little bit sour.
Especially
Um,
the kind you would eat, which would have more dark chocolate
yeah.
or pure cacao. Yeah.
So it's slightly a little bit drying too, because and so it's knowing what your body needs. And so if chocolate is not really it's got a lot of flavors to it. But I think that the main imbalance here would be there's a lot of sugar,
Yep.
and also there's that astringent bitterness to it that's a little bit drying to the system.
Okay.
So, um, if you have too much of like astringent and bitter, that is those are both depleting and
Okay.
drying. And so um, if you're not grounded, that can
Throw you off.
throw you off.
So what about just like a sweet, like a Hershey bar, a regular one that's not the higher quality chocolate,
Mhm.
and you want to have a little, okay, you want to have more. So what's that conversation you have with yourself to mind the store in a sense, mind the
Mhm.
temple that our body is?
So the senses have the purposes of also um, guiding you to what you need.
Okay.
So every taste can be balancing or imbalancing. And knowing the effect of each one can really help you make choices.
So set the intention as you're tasting before you when you're having the experience or you're eating,
Mhm.
set the intention. How would you word that intention with yourself or
So it's
somebody?
like, okay, if I'm having a Hershey's, which is it's a lot of sugar, but
Mm.
if I have one of those, okay, I'm like, okay, I know there's a lot of this sweet taste. I'm going to like have a little bit of a piece, but then that's enough. And I
Yeah.
know that having that, maybe later I'm going to need to balance it out with something lighter.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, and you can assess how I what I would say is so yeah, now that I'm conscious, I'm like, okay, I don't need to wolf this down because wolfing down implies unconsciousness,
Mhm.
just, just eating and not thinking perhaps. And and it's saying, okay, and yeah, generally something sweet, something like that. Yeah, I'll eat some and set some aside for later because you
Mhm.
don't want to eat it all and not have it later when you want it. So yeah, and that just even that simplistic conversation is still better than many I've had or not had when eating something or, binging, if you will.
Yeah. So moving on from misuse of the senses, we have what we call failure of the intellect, which sounds a little bit heavy. So
Hmm.
let me elaborate on that further. It's basically knowing that you shouldn't do something and doing it anyway. Um, and so the example that I always like to use when I give my presentations is that you're out for some drinks with friends,
Hmm.
and you have work the next day. It's around like 12 a.m. already, maybe,
Hmm.
and so your buddies are
What are
like,
your
oh,
choices?
yeah, I have to be up for work at, let's say, 7 or 8 a.m. 7. So your buddies are like, hey, let's have one more, and you know that if you have one more, you're going to stay later, you're going to party a little bit harder, and by the time you need to wake up, you're going to be so hungover, you're going to be so tired, you're going to have a
Yeah,
headache, but you decide to do it anyway because in the moment it's fun, right?
right.
And so that's like a very basic example of when your intellect fails.
So it's another way of saying it could be with no judgment, but you failed yourself, meaning you're out of integrity with who you are, with who you want to be, and that next day, if you were going to do that, is gonna you're gonna pay in various ways.
Yeah.
So yeah, making that decision then, yeah, okay.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's not really about judgment, it's just like, what is going to, make me feel better or feel worse? I can choose the thing that's gonna make me feel better or worse.
Well, and it's a short-term gain
Mhm,
with staying and having another drink, but it's, yeah, it all blows up on you.
mhm. And it's like, once in a while is fine. It's the matter of habit, and how most of us don't think of this
Okay,
as as forming habits, so it tends to slip away from us.
sure.
We make our
Okay, so that
exception.
was the
Yeah.
second part.
Yes. So the third one is the most interesting, I think, because it's not completely in our control per
Hmm,
se, and that is what we call time. So, what are we talking about when we say time causes disease? Right. And
okay,
so this is not a direct translation. Everything that I'm telling you here, failure of the intellect, misuse of the senses, there are words in Sanskrit, which is the
sure.
language of Ayurveda, to describe these things, and I'm roughly translating
Okay,
them. So each of them can be a deeper discussion. But when we talk about time, we're talking mostly about the effects of excess motion in the mind,
okay.
also in the body, but mostly pertaining to the mind.
Hmm,
So the excess motion in the mind causes stress, and stress is one of the biggest killers um, and causes of
right.
disease. Yeah.
Which hurts a body over time.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, okay, that makes sense. So that's three. Was there a fourth or?
That's the three.
Okay,
And I would say, to tie all of that up into a larger cause, is forgetting our true nature.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, exactly.
Because why would we do that anyway? Why would we misuse our senses? Why would we have failure of the intellect and be under influence of stress if we didn't have this larger
Exactly.
primordial
So
cause?
so holding that and just and keeping that, that's the practice.
Hmm.
Now, so we did touch a bit on depleting yourself. So that's okay. So that's how, because we talked a little bit before as well on depleting yourself. Is there anything more you want to say? Anything you would say to people that come to you exhausted, tired, stressed? What off the bat subjects do you find yourself sharing with a lot of people as far as advice?
I find that a lot of people do not take care of themselves because there's a deeply ingrained belief that you should not put yourself first.
Ah,
And this is something that is very difficult actually to overcome, but without overcoming it, it is hard to completely heal.
hmm. What's at the root of a lot of that for people?
It could be something that happened in childhood, it usually is, but it also can be cultural belief systems.
Hmm.
Like, I grew up in a culture where your elders are respected, and it's, more oftentimes than not, you listen to what your parents say, and
Hmm.
their vision for your future and whatnot.
Right.
And so, like, and yes, we all live in this world and we have these roles to play. But without, acting without thinking about the consequences of everything that we do, we're going to lead ourselves to a place that we never intended to be.
Well, that's the time it tends to be when we get a clue. We get sick or
Mhm,
we're just so stressed. We look around and we say, life shouldn't be like this. Maybe I need to open up to another perspective.
mhm.
And that's when people come to you. By the way, what is your website and how can people reach out to you?
Okay, so my website is intrepidayurveda.com. And you can email me. It's intrepidayurveda@gmail.com. My phone number is also on the website, and I'm very open to people asking questions. So if you ever have like a simple question about Ayurveda, just shoot me an email.
Oh,
Um,
that's very nice of you
yeah.
to be open to people asking you questions. That yoga nidra, which looks is like a deeper sleep than sleep or even than meditation, and yet you're still aware. I know you teach this. what can people do just on their own to experience a little bit of this?
Okay, so yoga nidra is a practice where you're lying down still.
Hmm.
In my practice, it's about 45 minutes or so. And usually either a teacher is guiding you or you're listening to a recording that's guiding you, but you don't need any of these necessarily to get into a state of yoga nidra, because yoga nidra is a
Okay.
state.
Hmm.
It's just I have a certain method to get you there, and other people's have other methods to get you there.
Sure.
Um, so you can simply lie down on your back in like a shavasana position at home,
Hmm.
um, propped up however you need to be comfortable, because it's not meant to be grueling or anything. And uh, in my practice, usually we go body part by body part and we train ourselves to completely relax into it
Okay.
until that all of our body is completely relaxed.
Hmm.
And what's left is the mind active and aware. So from that state is where your usual physiological responses to stress have been turned off,
Hmm.
which is great because that
Right.
leaves you with unobstructed in creating new possibilities in your mind.
Okay.
And so this is a great time to set intentions for your future as well.
Okay.
Mhm.
I mean, Shavasana just at the end of yoga is wonderful. Obviously, after doing a whole hour of asanas, but just starting off with that and doing that, and you walking them through it, it sounds very relaxing, and that's where I think we're more susceptible to changing ourselves. Because let's face it, there are things about ourselves we want to change many times, and but we're resistant because we're in a comfort zone. But getting to that place of total relaxation, of total safety, it seems that's a good recipe for to create transformation. Is that right?
It is. That's the reason why I practice yoga nidra and I teach it is because I experienced the same thing.
Yeah.
Probably one of the most profound shifts that I have had through continuous practice. And what I got in a nutshell out of it was the true feeling of the meaning of whole, perfect, and complete. We're often
Love it.
told that we're whole, perfect, and complete, but we don't feel it.
That's right.
Mhm.
That's some good work to do. So either mirror work or just inner child or shadow work.
Mhm.
Just going down in that space until the person feels good with themselves and does feel worthy and all that. That's a definite good one. And yeah, doing it in yoga nidra. I almost think there should be another phrase for it, because yoga nidra sounds like you're going to be doing poses, asanas,
Yeah,
and quite the opposite. Yeah.
it's funny because well, yoga is kind of convoluted in the way that it has manifested in the States.
In the
Um,
Western world. Yeah.
right, because yoga is a philosophy. It's not actually just poses. However,
Yep.
so we have the word yoga, and then we have the word nidra. So nidra
Mhm.
means sleep, but it's not sleep either. So
Right.
it's this practice that's not sleep and it's not physical activity.
Right.
And yeah, so it is something in between.
You have in your logo a couple of Japanese inspired Shisa guard dogs in your logo for Ayurveda. So it looks like, are you bringing some Japanese influence? And if so, what is that to Ayurveda?
So this is a very personal thing to me because I am not of Japanese descent.
Mm.
However, I spent a lot of my formative years in Japan. So after I graduated college, I lived there for 3 years, um, had the time of my life, came back, and along the way, I found myself back there as a tour guide. So I was bringing people back and forth.
Mm.
And I never really gave much thought into Japanese religion, or Asian religion for that matter.
Uh-huh.
And growing up, my parents didn't practice Buddhism, but we went to Buddhist temples.
Sure.
So none of this really mattered to me until I started yoga and meditation.
Okay.
And Buddhism is from India, but
Right.
it traveled all the way to Japan. And there's this deep connection between all of these places because of that. And
Sure.
in a way that I don't think people even realize. Like, so when I went to Japan a couple of years ago, I had started meditation and yoga. I had done the Vipassana retreat, and so that's primarily Buddhist.
Mhm.
And so I was learning the meaning of Om, the universal sound, and everything.
Right.
And doing some research for my tour notes, I came across these guard dogs in Japan. They're not exclusive to Japan. You can find them in China.
British.
Hmm.
Yeah.
However, Japan was where I was. So when I found them and I saw that how they describe them is, yes, they're coming from Japanese mythology, but they're saying Om. And I thought that's really interesting. So one dog has their mouth
Mm.
open, one dog has their mouth closed.
Right.
That's a Sanskrit,
Ah, okay.
term. And if you walk around some of the temples in Japan, Buddhist ones, there are actually Hindu deities in those temples.
Right.
It's fascinating that, you know, we don't notice these things until it actually, just
Yeah,
comes
a
into
little
our
bit of study.
consciousness.
That's why, yeah, classes are good and for that. And that's very interesting. I definitely learned a few things with that. Thank you.
So the remote island Okinawa, which is
Oh,
between like the main island Japan and Taiwan,
uh-huh.
these guard dogs are called Shisa. They're very cute, but they're like the mascot of Okinawa. They're so intertwined into their culture,
Mhm.
and so it's evolved so that Om is no longer the original, why it's there. Now there's like a whole Japanese mythology story behind it, but even then you could see one has this, they're doing the Om thing. And
Mm,
it just reminds me how we are all really deeply connected, and we have all gone through thousands of years of history together to get to this point.
sure.
Yeah, and so this is I think it's very profound.
It is. And I understand it better now that you explained that. So the fusion and just the influence that moved across that part of the world, and you found that that thing that was in common. So yeah, very, very clever. Um, the kind of just in closing, what kind of people should seek you out for coaching or counseling?
So if you have an idea of where you want to go, you want to get healthier, and you want your life to be vibrant, you
Mm,
want to seek something that's not just your everyday slog, um, then you should come to see me. And we can work on the basics, but we can also go a little bit deeper to see, like, where are you holding yourself back? And from there, like, you'll transform your entire life. So
so wanting to achieve vibrancy in your life sounds like a great goal, a great reason why people want to come to you. And you're talking about natural vibrancy through natural means.
yeah, it's not, living life, being able to experience all of the rich, like the luxuries per se,
Yeah.
but the true luxury is really being able to be present. So yeah.
Isn't that interesting? The true
Mhm.
luxury being present. And that's above all. I mean, that is, then you're living. Then you know you're alive because you're present to life.
Mhm.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Well, Valerie, thank you for doing this interview. You've shared a lot of information that I know people will find valuable and helpful that they can use now and try out now. And I know you have some information on your website that they can get as well. And you don't mind them just texting you or sending you a question here or there to, you don't mind answering that. And tell people again where they can find you.
Yes. So my website is Intrepid Ayurveda, with intrepid meaning like fearless or daring,
Mhm.
adventurous. And my email is intrepidayurveda at gmail.com. And my phone number, I believe, is also on the website. So you can get into contact me however you feel comfortable.
All right. Wonderful. Thank you for what you do, Valerie. Appreciate it. Thank you for doing this interview.
Thank you.
Everybody, thank you for watching on Xpnsion Network Interviews. I'm Scott Ware with Radiance Magazine. Bye-bye. Introduction. But yeah, we'll get started, and it'll just be casual, conversation, easygoing.
Okay.
Okay. All right. It's going to be great.